So, for our listeners who are parenting children who've experienced early trauma or prenatal substance exposure or other challenges at the beginning of life, how do those layers impact or mimic PDA or create the conditions for PDA?
Yeah, that's a really good connection there. So, especially when we think about early trauma, so early trauma is going to impact brain development.
Mhm.
And it's going to impact how the associations that a child makes with various factors in their environment. If a child has been in a situation where they have felt very unsafe and they need to really shift into survival mode, their brains are going to remember that. So even when they are out of that situation and now they're actually in a stable, safe environment, their brain is still wired to be really anxious and sensitive to any possible trauma cues or signals. And so when there are certain trauma cues or trauma signals, their little brains are just going to shift into an anxious, protective state. And one of the primary hallmarks of anxiety is avoidance. So when something triggers anxiety in a child, especially if that anxiety is coming from a place of trauma, you're going to see a lot of avoidance. And sometimes that avoidance can also have some behavioral signs where, maybe there's some of the obvious ones where they're withdrawing and they don't want to go near that thing that's making them feel anxious. But you can also see pretty extreme dysregulation and really heightened behavioral responses like yelling, screaming, kicking, crying, pulling their own hair, pulling somebody else's hair, doing things that could be destructive towards themselves or to other people because they have become so dysregulated in face of that trigger for anxiety that's related to that trauma history. So that can involve a lot of avoidance that can look a lot like what we see in children whose parents are describing these PDA profiles.